This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to today's Legal Roundup. We are diving into major developments in high-profile murder cases, from shocking appellate reversals in South Carolina to emotional sentencing hearings in the state of Utah.
Alex Murdaugh's murder convictions were just overturned today.
Kouri Richins received life without parole for murder.
Richins' children described living in fear before sentencing.
A Florida mother allegedly pushed her son into water.
Paul Murdaugh's video evidence remains a trial centerpiece.
5 mysterious deaths surround the Murdaugh family history.
Kouri Richins' son wants her in prison forever.
The Supreme Court cites clerk misconduct in Murdaugh.
Starting with the Murdaugh reversal. The South Carolina Supreme Court has delivered a stunning blow to the prosecution by overturning Alex Murdaugh's double murder convictions. In a unanimous 5-0 decision, the justices ruled that Murdaugh was denied his fundamental right to a fair trial due to the actions of Colleton County Clerk of Court, Rebecca Hill. The court found that Hill essentially placed her fingers on the scales of justice by making improper comments to the jury. Specifically, the defense argued that she advised jurors not to believe Murdaugh's testimony and pressured them to reach a quick verdict. The High Court described this conduct as breathtaking and disgraceful, noting that it was unprecedented in the state's history. This means the consecutive life sentences for the 2021 murders of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, are now vacated.
While this is a massive victory for Murdaugh's defense team, it does not mean he's walking out of prison anytime soon. Attorney General Alan Wilson was very clear in his response, stating that while he disagrees with the court's decision, his office will aggressively seek to retry Murdaugh as soon as possible. In the meantime, Murdaugh remains incarcerated because he pleaded guilty to a long list of financial crimes in late 2023, for which he is serving a 40-year sentence. The Supreme Court acknowledged the immense time and money already spent on the initial 6-week trial, but emphasized that the integrity of the justice system demands an impartial jury untainted by external forces. The focus now shifts back to Colleton County, as the state prepares for a second high-stakes trial for the disgraced former attorney.
Now to Kouri Richins' sentencing. In Utah, Kouri Richins has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of her husband, Eric Richins. The sentencing took place on what would have been Eric's 44th birthday, adding a layer of somber irony to the proceedings. Judge Richard Matzik was incredibly firm in his ruling, stating that Richins is simply too dangerous to ever be free. He highlighted the calculated nature of the crime, noting that after a failed attempt to poison Eric on Valentine's Day, she doubled down and succeeded 17 days later by lacing his cocktail with a lethal dose of fentanyl. The judge also handed down consecutive sentences for insurance fraud, forgery, and attempted murder, ensuring that even if her primary conviction were somehow challenged, she would remain behind bars for a very long time.
The prosecution's case centered on the idea that Richins killed her husband for financial gain, specifically to solve her mounting debts and access his $4 million estate. During the hearing, Richins spoke for about 30 minutes, primarily addressing her 3 children. She told them that while she knows they might hate her right now, she will always be there for them when they are ready. Her defense team has already indicated they plan to appeal both the conviction and the sentence, and the judge granted them an extension to file for a new trial. Despite her claims of innocence and her previous public persona as a grieving widow who wrote a children's book about loss, the court found the evidence of her premeditation and greed to be overwhelming. The community and Eric's family finally have a sense of legal closure.
More on the Richins children. The sentencing of Kouri Richins was made even more harrowing by the details shared regarding her children's experiences. Letters read in court painted a disturbing picture of life in the Richins household before Eric's death. The children described their mother as being drunk almost daily and alleged that she would lock them in their rooms and even threaten to kill their pets. These revelations stood in stark contrast to the image Richins tried to project through her children's book, Are You With Me?, which was supposed to help kids deal with grief. Eric's sister, Katie Richins Benson, who now cares for the 3 boys, argued that Kouri used her children as props for a twisted narrative. She emphasized that the boys should never have to live in fear that the person who took their father could ever harm them again.
The financial motives were also further clarified during this segment of the legal process. Prosecutors believe Kouri was in deep debt with her house flipping business and was having an affair at the time of the murder. She had opened life insurance policies in Eric's name without his knowledge, hoping to cash in. However, she was unaware that Eric had already appointed his sister as the executor of his trust, effectively blocking Kouri's access to the bulk of his estate. This lack of access may have been the catalyst for her desperate actions. The judge noted that the tragedy befalling Eric's sons was absolute, and the life sentence was the only way to ensure their safety. The boys' own requests for their mother to stay in prison forever were a powerful factor in the final sentencing decision delivered by the court.
Next, a tragic Florida case. In Miami, a legal battle is unfolding over the confession of Patricia Ripley, a mother accused of drowning her 9-year-old son, Alejandro. Prosecutors allege that Ripley pushed her autistic, nonverbal son into a canal and then fabricated a story about an armed kidnapping to cover her tracks. Surveillance video eventually surfaced that appeared to show her pushing the boy into the water and running away. While she initially confessed to the crime, her lawyers are now fighting to have that confession tossed out. They claim that detectives used a controversial tactic known as the Christian burial technique to coerce her. This involves manipulating a suspect's religious beliefs and using themes of forgiveness to extract a statement. Her legal team argues that this exploitation of her faith makes the confession involuntary and legally inadmissible in her upcoming first-degree murder trial.
The details of the interrogation are quite intense, with defense filings claiming detectives used a combination of screaming and physical intimidation, such as pulling up very close to her and pushing her hand away. They allege that religious epithets were used alongside the Christian burial speech to break her down. Prosecutors, however, maintain that the confession was valid and that Ripley told detectives her son was in a better place after she drowned him. This case highlights the ongoing tension between law enforcement interrogation techniques and the constitutional protections against self-incrimination. As the court considers the motion to suppress, the focus remains on the tragic death of a vulnerable child who was pulled from the water by bystanders once before, only to be allegedly targeted again by his own mother. The outcome of this hearing will be critical for the prosecution's case.
Back to the Murdaugh evidence. As we look toward a potential retrial for Alex Murdaugh, it is important to remember the evidence that led to his initial conviction. One of the most powerful pieces of testimony came, in a sense, from the grave. Paul Murdaugh had recorded a Snapchat video at the family's dog kennels just minutes before he and his mother were killed. In that video, a voice that multiple witnesses identified as Alex Murdaugh can be heard in the background. This was devastating for the defense because Alex had consistently claimed he was never at the kennels that night and was instead visiting his mother. This video placed him at the scene of the crime during the exact window when the murders occurred. Even with the conviction overturned due to clerk misconduct, this digital evidence will likely remain a cornerstone of any future trial the state pursues.
The initial trial also included a jury visit to the Moselle estate, the hunting lodge where the killings took place. Jurors walked the grounds, seeing the small feed room where Paul was shot and the area where Maggie's body was found. This visit was intended to give the jury a physical sense of the layout and the proximity of the events. Despite the defense's efforts to suggest that Alex was a loving father and husband, the prosecution argued that his life was unraveling due to his drug addiction and massive financial thefts. They posited that he killed his family to create a diversion and gain sympathy as his legal and financial world collapsed. While the Supreme Court's ruling focuses on the procedural errors of the court clerk, the underlying evidence regarding the timeline and Alex's presence at the scene will be just as relevant in a second trial.
Exploring the Murdaugh family history. The Murdaugh case is not just about a single night of violence. It is about the collapse of a legal dynasty that ruled the South Carolina Lowcountry for over a century. 3 generations of Murdaugh men served as the chief prosecutor or solicitor in the region, amassing incredible power and influence. Alex Murdaugh, while not holding the official title, worked as a volunteer prosecutor and was a prominent figure in the family's private law firm. This deep-rooted influence meant that for decades, the family held many of the levers of power in their small town. However, as local journalists have noted, Alex seemed to inherit the family name and prestige without the same level of legal talent. His fall from grace has brought renewed scrutiny to several other mysterious deaths connected to the family, which locals have dubbed the Murdaugh mysteries.
These other cases include the 2019 boat crash that killed Mallory Beach, which Paul Murdaugh was allegedly piloting while intoxicated. That crash is often seen as the beginning of the end for the family's untouchable status. There are also ongoing investigations into the 2015 death of Stephen Smith, found on a rural road, and the 2018 death of the family's housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, who reportedly fell at the Murdaugh home. In each of these instances, the Murdaugh name appears in the periphery or at the center of the controversy. The overturning of Alex's murder conviction adds yet another chapter to this complex saga. As the state prepares for a new trial, the shadow of these other investigations continues to loom over the proceedings, reminding everyone that the influence of this once powerful family is being dismantled piece by piece in the public eye.
Focusing on the Richins reaction. During Kouri Richins' sentencing, the emotional weight was carried by Eric Richins' family, who did not hold back in their victim impact statements. They described Kouri as a cold-blooded killer who showed no remorse, even as she sat in the courtroom rolling her eyes and making faces during their testimony. One of the most heartbreaking moments was the mention of her son's desire for her to remain in prison forever. The prosecution argued that Kouri killed Eric because he was worth more to her dead than alive, citing her desire for life insurance money to cover her business debts. They also pointed out that she had a paramour and was planning a future that didn't include her husband. The jury's quick deliberation time of less than 3 hours was cited by Kouri herself as a sign of a heartless system, though the judge saw it as a clear reflection of the evidence.
Kouri's own statement at the hearing was defiant. She maintained her innocence and told her children never to apologize or beg for mercy for something they didn't do. She even urged them to be like their father, a comment that many in the courtroom found jarring, given the charges against her. Prosecutors also revealed a message she sent to an admirer, which they claimed showed her total lack of remorse and her intent to expose what she called the corruption of the county and the judge. Despite her attempts to frame herself as a victim of a biased legal system, the judge's sentence of life without parole stands as a final rejection of her narrative. The focus now remains on the well-being of the 3 boys who have lost both parents to this tragedy, as they try to move forward under the care of their aunt.
Finally, the Murdaugh legal reasoning. The South Carolina Supreme Court's decision to grant Alex Murdaugh a new trial rests entirely on the principle of judicial integrity. The court found that the actions of Clerk Becky Hill were so egregious that they fundamentally tainted the jury's impartiality. According to the ruling, Hill's improper external influences meant that the jury's efforts were in vain, as the trial was no longer fair. Murdaugh's defense attorneys, Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin, praised the decision, stating it affirms that the rule of law remains strong. They had long argued that Hill's conduct, which included writing a book about the trial while it was still ongoing, was a clear conflict of interest and a violation of Murdaugh's rights. The court agreed, noting that even in a high-profile and expensive trial, the right to an untainted jury is a demand that the justice system must meet without exception.
This reversal sets the stage for what will likely be another media circus in South Carolina. The original trial lasted 6 weeks and captivated the nation, and a second trial will likely be just as intense. Prosecutors will have to present their case all over again, including the Snapchat video and the financial motive, while the defense will likely be even more aggressive, now that they have seen the state's full hand. The Supreme Court's decision to remand the case for a new trial means the legal process starts over from the beginning regarding the murder charges. While the public may be weary of the Murdaugh name, the legal system is now obligated to provide the fair trial that was previously compromised. As we wait for a new trial date, the debate over jury tampering and the role of court officials will continue to be a major talking point in legal circles.
That concludes our roundup for today. Thank you for joining us for these critical legal updates. Follow this show for your daily briefing on the stories that matter most. We will see you tomorrow.